Welcome to the Wanderer's Rest. Tonight, the road has been long, and the world outside is fading away. Put down your burdens, find a place of comfort, and let this journey guide you into a deep, peaceful sleep. You are safe here. Let us begin. The evening air sits heavy and warm against your skin, thick with the humidity of a summer day slowly releasing its heat to the approaching night. And you can smell the river, that particular scent of moving, fresh water mixed with the green smell of algae on stones and the earthier odor of mud along the banks where the water level has dropped in the dry season. Your hands rest on the worn wooden gunwale of the boat, feeling the smoothness where countless other hands have gripped this same spot. The wood polished by decades of use until it feels almost like stone, cool and solid beneath your palms despite the day's lingering warmth. Your master stands on the bank above, his silhouette dark against the fading orange-pink light in the western sky, and he raises one hand in a gesture that is both farewell and blessing. And you bow from your seated position in the boat, feeling it rock gently beneath you with the movement, feeling the river already beginning to claim you, to separate you from the solid world of earth and routine, and carry you into the fluid world of water and night, and the ancient practice of ukai, cormorant fishing, as it has been done on this river for more than 1,300 years. Tonight is your first solo journey. Not your first time on the water, not your first time with the birds, but your first time alone, trusted to work through the darkness with only the fire and the current and your training to guide you. The cormorants shift restlessly on their perches at the bow of the boat. 5 birds dark as shadows, their long necks curved in elegant S shapes, their webbed feet gripping the smooth wood, and you can hear the quiet sounds they make, soft guttural clicks and whistles, the rustle of feathers as they preen and settle, the occasional splash as one dips its beak into the water that flows past the boat's hull just inches below the rail. Each bird is tethered with a slender cord around its throat, loose enough to breathe and swallow small fish, but tight enough to prevent them from swallowing the larger ayu sweetfish they will catch. An arrangement that seems cruel until you understand that these birds are not pets, but partners, bred for this work across generations, as essential to the fishing as the boat itself, or the fire that will soon illuminate the water. That fire waits now in the kagaribi, the suspended iron basket that hangs from a long pole extending forward from the bow, and you reach for the oil-soaked pine kindling stacked in the basket and the flint and steel from the pouch at your waist. The first strike sends sparks arcing through the gathering dusk, brief orange stars that die before reaching the kindling, and you adjust your angle and strike again, and again, until a spark catches and a thin trail of smoke rises, and you lean close and blow gently, feeding the infant flame with breath and intention, and the kindling catches with a soft whoomph, and light blooms suddenly in the dimness, warm and orange and alive, pushing back the encroaching night. The firelight transforms everything immediately. The dark water becomes a shifting surface of orange and black. The cormorant's feathers gleam with reflected flame. The inside of the boat glows warm as a room lit by hearth. And you can see your own hands clearly now, the lines on your palms, the calluses from rowing and rope work, and beyond the small circle of illumination, the world recedes into soft darkness, the far bank barely visible, the sky above deepening from indigo to something closer to black, though the first stars have not yet appeared. You push away from the bank with your pole, feeling the boat slide free of the mud and enter the current's embrace, and the journey begins. The current is gentle but insistent, and you feel it immediately as the boat leaves the shallows and enters the main flow. A subtle shift in how the vessel sits in the water, a new quality to its movement, less rocking and more gliding, as though the river has decided to carry you, and all you must do is allow it. Guide it slightly with the long steering oar that trails from the stern. The rhythm of the water moving past the hull creates a sound like whispered conversation, a continuous soft rushing punctuated by the occasional lap when a small ripple strikes the side at an angle. And this sound becomes the foundation of everything else. The bass note beneath the higher melodies of bird calls from the darkening banks, and the crackle of the fire burning steadily in its basket. You dip the oar into the water and feel the resistance, the river's strength made tangible through the wooden shaft, and you make a small correction to keep the boat centered in the deeper channel where the ayu gather in the cooler water, away from the sun-warmed shallows. The oar cuts through the current with a clean sound, water swirling in small eddies as the blade moves through it, and droplets fall from the shaft when you lift it, catching firelight as they descend and disappearing into the black water, with sounds too small to hear beneath the river's constant voice. The Kagaribi fire has settled into steady burning now, the pine wood releasing its resinous smoke in a thin stream that rises and dissipates into the night air, carrying the sharp, clean scent of burning pitch. And the heat from the flames reaches your face, even from several feet away, a gentle warmth that contrasts with the cooler air rising from the water's surface. The light extends perhaps 10 feet in all directions from the boat, creating a moving sphere of visibility that travels with you downstream, illuminating the water to a depth of several feet. You can see stones on the riverbed where the water is shallow, see the flash of silver when fish dart away from the light, startled by this bright intrusion into their dark world. The cormorants have grown alert with the lighting of the fire, their hunting instinct triggered by the illumination they have been trained to associate with feeding, and they lean forward on their perches, necks extended, eyes fixed on the water, watching for the silvery flash of ayu drawn to the surface by the light, confused or curious, swimming closer to investigate. You watch them watching, these birds who are neither wild nor fully domesticated, but something in between, working partners whose instincts align with your purpose, and you feel a kinship with them in this moment, all of you suspended between earth and water, between day and night, engaged in work that is older than memory. The riverbanks slide past slowly on either side, dark shapes of trees and rocks, and occasional buildings visible at the edge of the firelight's reach. And you recognize landmarks, even in darkness. The large boulder shaped like a crouching bear, the willow tree that leans far out over the water, the small shrine on the eastern bank where you always bow in passing, asking blessing for the night's work. Time has shifted its quality, stretched and become elastic, measured not by hours or even minutes, but by the distance traveled, by the gradual changes in the river's character as you move downstream, by the deepening of night and the emergence of stars. The moment arrives not by decision, but by recognition. You see the flash of silver deeper in the water, the characteristic darting movement of ayu feeding near the surface, drawn upward by insects or by the light itself. And your hands move to the nearest cormorant, feeling the smooth feathers under your fingers, the solid muscle and bone beneath. And you lift the bird and feel its eagerness, the tension in its body like a drawn bow, and you release it with a gentle toss outward, and it hits the water with barely a splash and disappears beneath the surface in a stream of silver bubbles. The moment of submersion feels eternal, though it lasts perhaps 3 heartbeats, and you watch the surface where the bird vanished, seeing the disturbed water settling, the firelight dancing on the ripples, and then the cormorant erupts upward in an explosion of spray and beating wings, and in its beak, thrashing and silver in the firelight, an ayu, good-sized, its scales catching the light like polished metal. You pull gently on the tether, and the bird swims toward the boat with strong, webbed foot strokes, and when it reaches the side, you help it aboard and take the fish from its beak with practiced fingers, feeling the cool slipperiness of scales, the muscular strength of the fish still flexing and fighting, and you slide it quickly into the holding basket where it joins the others caught during the evening's preparation hours with your master. The cormorant shakes itself vigorously, sending a spray of river water across the deck that hisses when it hits the hot metal of the fire basket's support, and the bird returns to its perch and settles, preening its wing feathers with its long beak, looking pleased in the way birds can look pleased, and you feel a warmth in your chest that has nothing to do with the fire. Pride in the bird's skill, satisfaction in the successful catch, and beneath these, the deeper pleasure of doing work that connects you to centuries of fishermen on this river, all the way back to when this method was developed to feed emperors and nobles with the sweetest river fish in Japan. You release a second bird, then a third, establishing a rhythm. Watch the water, read the signs, choose the moment, release the bird, guide its return, secure the catch, allow it to rest. And this rhythm becomes a meditation. Each repetition the same yet different. Each dive a small mystery until the bird surfaces. Each catch a small gift from the river. The boat drifts steadily downstream through this work, the current carrying you while your attention focuses on the small sphere of illuminated water, on the movements of fish and birds, on the subtle adjustments of the steering oar needed to keep you in the optimal position. The fire crackles and pops as pockets of sap in the wood heat and expand, sending small showers of sparks upward into the darkness, where they rise on the heat and fade like tiny dying stars. And you add another piece of pine to the basket, feeling the immediate increase in light and heat, watching the new wood catch and begin its own transformation from solid to ash. The night has fully arrived now, The western sky has released its last hold on daylight's colors and surrendered to the same deep blue-black as the rest of the dome above. And stars have emerged, thousands of them visible away from the fire's glow. The Milky Way, a pale river across the heavens, mirroring the dark river beneath your boat. The work continues in a rhythm so steady it becomes almost unconscious. Your hands and eyes and judgment working together without the need for thought. And in this state, your awareness expands beyond the immediate tasks to encompass the larger world of sound and sensation that surrounds the small, bright sphere of your fishing. You become aware of layers of sound you hadn't noticed before. Beneath the constant whisper of current against hull, there is the deeper sound of the river itself, the low rumble of water moving over the rocky bed. And beneath that, something even deeper, a vibration more felt than heard, the voice of the river in its entirety, from mountain source to distant sea. From the banks come the night sounds of summer, crickets in overlapping waves of chirping, their collective song rising and falling in slow pulses. And behind this, the occasional call of a night bird, and once the distant sound of a temple bell, bronze voice rolling across the water from somewhere upstream, marking an hour that has no meaning here, where time is measured by the number of fish in the basket and the slow progress downstream. The sound of the bell fades gradually, absorbed by distance and the night air, leaving behind a silence that somehow feels richer for having been filled and then emptied. The cormorants have settled into their own rhythm, and you have learned which birds are most effective in which conditions. The largest male for the deeper pools where big ayu lurk near the bottom. The smaller female with the quickest reflexes for the shallower rapids where fish dart between stones. And each bird returns from its dive and takes its rest, and goes again when called, tireless in the way that creatures bred for specific work can be tireless, finding satisfaction in the exercise of their particular skills. You have learned to read their postures, to know when one needs longer rest, to sense when the fishing in a particular stretch has been exhausted, and it's time to let the current carry you to new water. The fire has burned down and been rebuilt twice now, and your movements in tending it have become as automatic as breathing. Adding wood when the light begins to dim, arranging the pieces to allow airflow, using the hooked pole to pull half-burned logs into better position. All of this done while still watching the water, still tracking the birds, still making the small adjustments to the steering oar that keep the boat in the current's center. Your face has grown accustomed to the fire's heat, and when you turn away to look at the dark banks or up at the stars, the cool night air on your cheek feels shocking for a moment, a reminder of the temperature difference between your small sphere of light and warmth and the larger darkness beyond. The catch has been good, the basket perhaps half full of ayu, their silver bodies now still, their bright eyes dimmed. Enough that your master will be pleased, enough that the restaurant owners who buy the catch will have fish to serve their guests tomorrow. These ayu caught in the traditional way, bringing premium prices from those who value authenticity and the taste that comes only from fish taken from the river alive and killed just before cooking. But the number of fish matters less now than the experience itself. This night on the water, this communion with river and birds and fire and darkness, this ancient practice that connects you to something larger than yourself. The river's character changes as you drift into a section where the banks widen and the current slows. The water deepening into pools where the surface becomes almost mirror still, except for the slow swirling eddies that mark the deeper channels, and the firelight reflects on this calmer water with a steadiness it couldn't achieve in the rippled shallows upstream, creating a golden pathway on the surface that extends forward from the boat like a road made of light leading into darkness. The quality of sound changes too, less rushing and splashing, more subtle lapping and gentle swirling, the river speaking in a lower, slower voice, and your breathing unconsciously matches this new rhythm, slowing, deepening. You ship the steering oar and let the boat drift freely for a moment, trusting the current to carry you true, and you kneel at the bow and lean out slightly over the water, looking down into the illuminated depths. The water here is clear enough that you can see perhaps 6 feet down, can see the rocky bottom and the waving water plants anchored to stones, and moving among these plants, ghosts of silver and shadow, the ayu, dozens of them, swimming in loose schools, their mouths opening and closing as they feed on whatever microscopic life the current brings them. They seem unafraid of the light at first, curious even, swimming closer to investigate, and you hold perfectly still, barely breathing, watching them hang suspended in the golden water like living calligraphy, like brushstrokes of silver on a dark page. The cormorants sense the abundance and strain forward on their perches, and you select the best diver from among them and release it directly into this school of fish. And what follows is an underwater ballet visible through the clear water. The dark torpedo shape of the bird cutting downward, the explosion of ayu in all directions, the cormorant's incredible maneuverability as it twists and turns in pursuit, and then the moment of capture. The fish secure in the beak, the powerful legs driving the bird back toward the surface. When it emerges, you see that it has caught 2 fish somehow, one in its beak and one trapped against its chest by a wing. An unexpected bounty, and you laugh quietly at the bird's prowess as you help it aboard and secure both fish. The work continues in this rich pool, dive after dive, the basket filling steadily, and you become aware of a deep contentment settling into your body, a satisfaction that has nothing to do with the size of the catch, and everything to do with being exactly where you should be, doing exactly what you should be doing. Part of a tradition that stretches back through countless generations of fishermen on this river, all of them experiencing this same convergence of fire and water, bird and fish, human skill and natural abundance. The line between work and meditation has dissolved completely, Each movement is both practical and ceremonial. Each caught fish, both food and offering. Each moment, both ordinary and sacred. The pool's abundance eventually begins to wane as the ayu grow wary and move to deeper water beyond the fire's reach. And you take up the steering oar again and guide the boat back into the main current, letting the river carry you onward to new water, new possibilities. The stars above have wheeled slightly across the sky, marking the passage of hours, though you couldn't say how many. And you realize, with quiet surprise, that you're not tired, despite the continuous work. That the river and the night and the rhythm of the fishing have energized rather than depleted you, filled some reservoir inside that you didn't know was empty. The decision to turn back comes not from conscious thought, but from a subtle shift in your awareness, a sense that the night's work has reached its natural completion. And you use the steering oar to guide the boat toward the eastern bank, where the current is weaker. And you begin the slow process of rowing upstream, back toward the landing where you began. The work is harder now, pulling against the current rather than riding with it, each stroke of the oars requiring effort, and you feel it in your shoulders and back. A good tiredness, the fatigue of muscles well used, and you settle into the rhythm of rowing. Dip, pull, lift, return. The oar blades cutting into the dark water and emerging with small waterfalls streaming from their edges, droplets catching firelight as they fall. The cormorants have roused from their rest and sense the change in direction, the return toward home and food and their familiar perches in the master's enclosure, and they shift and flutter and make their soft calling sounds, and you speak to them quietly, words of encouragement and praise, telling them what good work they did tonight, how proud your master will be. And though they likely don't understand the words, they seem to understand the tone, settling into calm readiness for the journey's end. The fire still burns, but you let it begin its final decline, no longer adding wood, allowing it to consume what remains and gradually reduce to coals and then ash. And the light diminishes slowly, the circle of visibility contracting foot by foot as the flames lower. The landmarks pass in reverse now, familiar in new ways. The shrine on the bank where you bowed in departure now receives your bow in return. The willow tree's trailing branches dark curtains against the stars. The bear-shaped boulder, a patient sentinel marking your progress. You pass other boats occasionally, other fishermen working the night shift, and you exchange quiet greetings, voices carrying across the water, brief connections in the darkness. And there is a fellowship in these encounters, a shared understanding of the work and the night and the river that requires no explanation. Their fire baskets glow like fallen stars on the water's surface, moving points of light in the larger darkness, and you navigate around them with practiced ease. The physical work of rowing has its own meditation, the repetitive motion allowing the mind to drift while the body continues its task. And you find yourself thinking of nothing and everything, fragments of the night's experiences, images of diving birds and silver fish, the sound of the temple bell that marked an hour long past, the feeling of the current's strength transmitted through the oar handle. These thoughts arise and fade like the patterns in the fire coals, requiring no attention, simply passing through consciousness like water through the river's stones, shaping you in small ways with each passage. The night has reached its deepest point. The hours after midnight, when the world seems to hold its breath, when even the cricket song has diminished and a profound quiet settles over the river valley. And you row through this stillness with smooth, steady strokes, the boat cutting upstream through water that seems thicker now, heavier with night. And above you, the stars have reached their zenith and begun their slow descent toward dawn, though dawn itself is still hours away, and darkness reigns complete and unchallenged over the sleeping land. You have been on the water long enough now that returning to land has become difficult to imagine. The solid world of banks and buildings and roads feeling distant and somehow less real than this floating world of current and firelight. And when you check the landmarks sliding past in the darkness, you realize you have come farther downstream than you intended, farther than your master usually permits apprentices to travel on their first solo journey. But the night has been so rich, and the fishing so successful, and the experience so absorbing, that the distance seems less important than the continuation of this state, this communion with the river. The fire has burned low again, and you rebuild it. But this time you add the wood more slowly, more carefully, creating a smaller, steadier flame, rather than the larger blaze you maintained earlier. And the reduced light creates a more intimate atmosphere, the circle of visibility contracting to just the boat and the immediate water around it, the banks becoming invisible, the sense of being suspended in darkness deepened. The cormorants have begun to show signs of fatigue. Their returns to the boat are slightly less energetic, their rest periods between dives growing longer. And you make the decision to let them rest now, to give them time to dry their feathers completely and restore their energy. And they settle on their perches and tuck their heads beneath their wings and still their bodies in the way birds do, becoming so motionless they might be carved from wood. With the fishing paused, the night reveals itself more fully. The cricket song from the banks seems louder now, or perhaps you're simply more attuned to it, and you can distinguish individual insects within the collective chorus, can hear the slight differences in pitch and rhythm that make each voice unique. The water sounds change your perception as well. What seemed like simple flowing reveals itself as infinitely complex, a tapestry of gurgles and laps and subtle rushings, the river speaking in a language older than human words. The fire crackles softly, burning down to a bed of coals that glow orange and red, pulsing slightly brighter with each breath of wind. And the scent of the smoke has become something you barely notice, as much a part of the environment as the river smell or the night air. You lean back against the stern and look upward at the stars, and the slow rocking of the boat creates the illusion that the stars are moving rather than you, wheeling slowly across the fixed point of your vision. And you think about how many fishermen have looked up at these same stars from boats on this same river. How many have felt this same sense of being part of something continuous and eternal, a practice that predates history and will likely continue long after you yourself are gone. There is comfort in this thought, in being a single link in a long chain, in knowing that the work you do tonight matters, not because it is exceptional, but because it is part of an ongoing tradition, each night's fishing adding to a collective story that stretches across centuries. The current carries you steadily onward through this meditation, the boat following the river's chosen path, and you make no effort to guide it, trusting the water to avoid obstacles, to carry you safely through the darkness. The reduced firelight creates dancing shadows that play across the wet boards of the deck, abstract patterns that form and dissolve and reform, mesmerizing in their constant change. And you watch these shadows and the glowing coals and the dark water sliding past, and your mind empties of thought, becomes simply a vessel for perception, for the direct experience of being here, now, on the river in the deep of night. The landing comes into view gradually, first as a slightly less dark section of the eastern bank, then as the dim outline of the dock and the shapes of other boats already tied there, and finally as the familiar details emerge in the dying firelight, the worn wooden posts, the rope loops for securing boats, the stone steps leading up to the fishermen's sheds. You ship the oars and let the boat's momentum carry it the final distance, and you reach out and catch the dock post with one hand, feeling the rough wood, feeling the subtle current still pulling at the boat, even here in the shallows. And you make the boat fast with practiced knots, the rope moving through your hands with the automaticity of long training. The fire in the kagaribi has reduced to a handful of glowing coals, and you let them burn out naturally rather than dousing them, watching the final small flames flicker and fade, the orange glow diminishing until only the faintest warmth remains in the iron basket. And with that fading, the night seems to deepen even further. The darkness that was held at bay for hours now flowing back in to reclaim its territory. Your eyes adjust quickly to the absence of firelight, and you discover that the darkness is not as complete as it first seemed. There is starlight enough to see by once your vision adapts, and the river's surface catches and reflects what little light exists, creating a path of lesser darkness through greater darkness. The cormorants know they are home and become restless with anticipation of being freed from their tethers and fed the small reward fish they receive after a night's work, and you tend to them with care, loosing each cord, checking each bird for any injury or problem, smoothing feathers, speaking soft words of thanks and praise. And they hop from the boat to the dock, and from the dock to the bank, and make their way with awkward waddling steps toward the enclosure where they spend their days. You gather the basket of fish, heavier than you expected, a good night's catch by any measure, and you lift it carefully and step from boat to dock, feeling the subtle shift from floating to solid ground, a transition that always takes a moment to adjust to after hours on the water. The world of land feels strange after the fluid world of the river, too still, too fixed, lacking the gentle rock and sway that became so natural over the course of the night. And you stand for a moment, finding your balance, letting your body remember how to exist on unmoving earth. The boats around you creak softly in their moorings. The water laps against the dock posts, and from somewhere up the bank you can hear voices, other fishermen returning, comparing catches, sharing stories of the night's work. But you are not ready yet to join them, not ready to break the spell of solitude and silence that still holds you. You look back at the river one final time, seeing it now as a dark ribbon winding away into darkness, its surface occasionally catching a glint of starlight, and you bow to it, a gesture of respect and gratitude, thanking it for safe passage, for good fishing, for the gift of this night, suspended between water and air, fire and darkness, work and meditation. The river flows on, unchanged by your thanks, patient and eternal. And you turn away and begin the walk up the bank toward the sheds, where you will count and record the catch and prepare the fish for morning market. And though your body moves through these practical tasks, your awareness remains partly on the water, partly in the night just completed, carrying with you into the coming day the deep peace found in the rhythm of oars and the dance of fire on dark water, the perfect stillness at the center of motion, the ancient practice that connects you to the river, and the river to the sky, and the sky to something larger than words can hold, something that asks nothing except presence, offers nothing except this, the profound satisfaction of being exactly where you are, doing exactly what you do, part of the endless flow.